Hello viewers, today we are excited to host Felicia again on our platform. If you have watched the previous videos, then she is not new to you. And today we'll be talking about the social issues that affect people with disability. And we are going to start with family. So Felicia.
Thanks again for hosting me. As always, I'm Felicia Mburu. I am an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. And today, last time we focused a lot more on the law.
Yes.
So today I'm hoping we'll focus more on how the law interacts with our social, family, and educational settings, so that people are aware. You know, there are aspects. We have what we call socio-economic rights recognized under the Constitution of Kenya. So you might want to claim these rights, but at the same time, you also need to know how to claim them, because these are things that happen to us on a daily. We just don't think about it from a legal context.
Yes.
Yeah. That's where I'm hoping we can start off from today.
All right.
Yeah.
And we can start now from the family setting so that we can go down.
Yeah. So the beauty of it all is how our law again is set up by the community and the people. Just another refresher that the law, it's the people who determine it. Now, how is this determined? Like any other society, it's the nucleus family that determines the law. So you'll notice our social laws, we're talking about the Marriage Acts, Inheritance Act, Succession Act, Children's Acts, all of that are purely based around the family setting. So then the question is, what is family under the law? Which means we start from a very interesting location. I know things have changed, but let's assume we're working with the traditional family,
Yes.
mom, dad, children. That is what our Children's Act and our Marriage Act recognizes.
Yes.
Although I do know our Marriage Act also recognizes aspects of polygamy around it, and we do recognize marriage from different faiths and traditions. We do have the Hindu marriages are recognized. We have the Muslim marriages which are recognized, which allow polygamy to some extent.
Yeah.
We have the African traditional marriages, the rurashios that we do, which also recognizes polygamy to some extent. We have civil law marriages. This is the one where you go to the AG.
Yes.
And then we have the Christian marriages where you go to the church.
Yes.
And those ones are definitely monogamous in their nature. Now, why is this important? Because that is how our laws define family. So once you are married under these circumstances, I do acknowledge there's the circumstance of can we stay? But that's another story we'll deal with a little bit later in this conversation. Once you're married under these circumstances, then it is assumed that you're a family. You're already a family unit. Then that's now where the children come in later. The African assumption is once you get married, next thing is children.
Yeah.
So let's deal with the aspect of marriage first, because if you're a person with a disability, can you get married? Technically, yes, you can get married. If you have physical or sensory disabilities, it is quite easy. That one is straightforward. The law does not discriminate. However, our Marriage Act of 2014 says that persons who have whether permanent or temporary insanity cannot get married because you cannot give consent to get married. Again, the issue of legal capacity seems to come in.
Yeah.
And it gets worse because we have the penal code which says that defilement of an imbecile. Well, it doesn't recognize whether male or female, but most of the time you notice that these sections tend to affect women rather than men. Yeah, who have mental disability. So it's something, I remember in 2014, I was actually there, I was part of the team that were taken to Naivasha by the government to try and rephrase this part of the law. But unfortunately, the way it is, if you do have a mental disability, you cannot legally get married in Kenya.
Okay, so you mentioned that people with sensory disabilities are kind of exempted from.
Yeah.
So what are these sensory disabilities?
Sensory disabilities would be talking about blind, deaf, albinism.
Yes.
And also wheelchair users to some extent. So those ones are allowed to get married because the assumption is you're a person of sound mind. Now, unfortunately, mental disability, because we don't have a proper definition in Kenya, you find this is what is defined by the National Council for Persons with Disabilities largely. And here you'll find people with autism, people with cerebral palsy, people with Jorgen syndrome to some extent. Basically anything that looks remotely developmental will automatically be classified under mental disability. Okay. And that is why it is so crucial. We need to train our nurses, our doctors, or the ones, our psychiatrists, to understand the difference between intellectual cognitive disabilities and psychosocial disabilities, so that way we don't end up having people being misclassified all the time. Yes. And even if you're, we also don't advocate for classification, because what that does is that it leads to discrimination. Yeah, because the minute you have a psychiatrist report, well, let's just assume that you can never get married. Yeah. Because the law is very clear. It says whether permanent or temporary. And you know, life happens to all of us. Maybe you never had a disability before, but COVID has proven a lot for us right now. Because of stress, because of life pressures, COVID has happened, things like that. People end up developing different psychosocial disabilities, stress-related PTSD, trauma, things like that. And then because of that, remember the law says even if it's temporary. You cannot get married. Yes. So then because of life happening, here you are finding yourself in a quagmire where you can't get married. Or worse still, now under the Divorce Act, the Marriage and Divorce Act, if you're a person with a mental disability, your spouse can divorce you on the basis of that.
So when they divorce you because you are insane?
Yes.
So when we are talking about now insanity, whether temporary or permanent, I'm stuck at, we have individuals who have autism. Yeah. And when you look at them or when you interact with them, they really don't strike you as someone who has autism. Yeah. They are able to they're able to work. Yeah. We have people who have even YouTube channels and they do videos. And so you want to tell me that even with all that ability to carry on their lives like normal, they cannot get married under this?
You cannot get married. Not officially anyway. Okay. We do know they get married. We do know we have happy, thriving couples with all of this. But you'll find in such cases it's because these are people who have fought for their rights. But as the law, the way it is set up, you cannot legally get married. Yeah.
Right. So now let's look at family. Yeah. Families with people who have these conditions. Yeah. What role do they play in empowering or disempowering, if there's such a word, these frameworks?
Very good question, and I'm glad you've asked it, because the biggest challenge here is the family. You find a lot of the attitudes towards the person, like a lot of the defilement cases I get against women and girls who have mental disabilities, it's usually the parents reporting it. Yeah. They're like, oh, we are doing nini anafanya. And we're talking about a 26-year-old woman, you know, a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old man who have actually found someone and they've fallen in love and they want to get married. Yes. But because of societal stereotypes around mental disability, the other family is thinking, no, we cannot associate with people like you. So they're the ones who go and report this person for defilement in the cases of men. But in the cases of women and girls, you'll find it is the family, because they're thinking about, if this one gets pregnant, who's going to raise that child? You know. Yeah. So then they're the ones who go and report for defilement. Well, I do agree there are a lot of genuine defilement cases against women and girls, and even boys with mental disabilities. There's a small percentage, I'd say about 10%, where you can see this was an open relationship.
There was consent.
There was consent between these two, but the families cannot accept. The assumption is that if you have a mental disability, you are asexual. You don't have sexual feelings. And I'm like, no. Just because my mind processes information differently does not mean that my body agrees with my mind. So there will be hormonal changes, there will be sexual development, and it is for the families to teach your child, despite their disability, about sex, sexuality, and reproductive health rights.
Yes.
It is your duty as a family. But most people, because they assume you can't understand, then they don't teach you.
Yes.
And then that's how we end up with all this myriad of cases of people got married, quote unquote, without knowing that they can't get married. Or if they did get married and they knew they can get married, they don't know how to deal with the sex part of it, the reproductive part of it.
Yes.
Or if they, in the case where it's family, you find family interference continuously
Yes.
in this couple's marriage life, you know. So those are societal issues. There's nothing the law can do about it. It is literally, again, for us parents to raise our children to know who they are,
Yes.
how they present themselves, and how to manage that in the context of a family setting.
Yeah.
You know.
So, okay, let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's assume I'm a mother to someone who has mental issues.
Yeah.
I just want to portray a clear picture,
Yeah.
and you are a mother to a son.
Yeah.
So if my daughter falls in love with your son,
Yeah.
there are parents who now come, like, I would go and report your son for
Yeah.
defiling my daughter.
Yes.
And then from your end, what if I'm the one who has reported your son for defiling my daughter? So what challenges does the son with mental issues face, like when the family are against the marriage? Mostly, what do they accuse the sons?
Oh, wow, that's loaded. Everything. They accuse the sons of everything.
Like the most top of the list.
The top one is your son lied to my child. Yeah, your son lied. And first of all, let's backtrack a little bit. It's not always the lie part.
Yeah.
Usually, when these cases come to me, both parties are angry and accusing each other. So on the boy's family, it will be, no, my son can never do this. My son is perfect. On the girl's family, you're like, well, she's pregnant,
Yeah.
and we've seen her hovering around your boy,
Yeah.
so your boy is lying to you. And then when you look at the two of them, I always like having this such interviews with the so-called victims in the room. When you look at the two of them, you can see they have that sparkle in their eye. You
Like
know,
them
they're happy to see each other. They don't care what is going on around themselves. And that's when I usually stop the conversation and I tell the families, please, parents, step outside. I want to deal with the two of this.
Yes.
Because you can clearly see this is not defilement. It was consensual sex, but because of the family's opinion on them, then it interferes with the whole case, you know. So those are the top two accusations I hear. You know,
yeah.
My son is perfect, he can never do this. And on the girl side, it's your son is a liar.
Our daughter is pregnant.
Yeah, he took advantage of our daughter.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not always like that, because you can clearly see this is societal breakdown.
Yeah.
Just talk to your kids about sex. Both kids, whether they have disability or not, raise your children to learn about sex.
Yes.
Yeah.
So also now, let's talk about the family members
Yeah.
who are so embarrassed about their children,
Yeah.
and they hide them. Because I have seen that it's illegal and you can be charged
Yes.
for hiding
Yeah.
a member of the family
Yeah.
who has a disability.
Yeah.
But I don't think most people know that.
Yes, now we're jumping into the Children's Act. The Children's Act says clearly that all children are equal. They're entitled to participate, to be involved in their communities, to go to school, and to develop to the best of their ability. Now, that best of their ability is what captures the rights of the children with disabilities very well. So you find the first mix, we have to address the societal aspects first before we can deal with the
children.
hiding part. Now, the society does this when you give birth to a child with a disability. First of all, you're likely to be divorced.
Yes.
Yeah, it's always the mother's problem. And your in-laws, even your own family, will disassociate with you, because the assumption is you gave birth to a curse, you know. Now imagine this has been drummed into your head that you gave birth to a curse, for over like 2-3 years and things like that. And then you're raising this child with that attitude that this kid is a curse. So naturally, and you're trying to fit into this society because you have been excommunicated because of this kid. So naturally, your response is to hide your child.
Yes.
Yeah. It is illegal. I understand the pain. But remember, it is illegal. It is an offense known as neglect. Secondly, you're denying this child the right to education. Again, another offense under the Basic Education Act. So you will be arrested and charged and taken to jail if found doing that.
Yes.
You're also denying this child access to health, because irrespective of whatever disability they have, they most likely need general health care still has to be done. If your child gets sick, akipata homa, malaria, stuff like that, they still need to go to a healthcare center. But here you are hiding your child and treating them in their house. And by the about treatment, you'll find a lot of people are treating the mental disability, forgetting that this is still a human body. It might have other issues. Yeah. So it's not necessarily always my mind that is the problem. It could be I have a heart condition.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I know Down syndrome children, always, majority of them tend to have heart conditions that go with it.
Yeah.
CP children, it's not just about their mind. They also tend to have issues with their muscles and all of that. So they do need a general doctor to also look into that. But you, because you're treating the mind, you end up denying them the right to health care, general health care.
Yeah.
So there are all those issues that you're denying this child. And that is why the law came in to say that this child has rights. And if you do violate those rights, you will be arrested.
Yes.
Is it fair? No, it is not. But again, it comes down to how do we address it? We have to address the societal issues around it.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is now, talk to the community, stop excluding parents of children with disabilities, involve them in their daily life. Community health workers, go and check on these kids. Ministry of Education, give us facilities for our children and things like that. Then that way, when the child is included, then you won't see parents hiding their kids.
Their children.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.